Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, guys. I hope you guys are enjoying this series. This is the Balagha series. Now, what I've done is actually change the names from Quranic Insights into Quranic Eloquence. So, let me know what you guys think of this name. You think this name is appropriate for it or befitting or a better name than this? Let me know, inshallah, and I'll see if I can make any changes. So, right, so first of all, let's look at this verse now. Verse number 10. Waw is used over here. So in Arabic, when you use waw, waws have different purposes or aims and objectives. So over here, waw is called the wasal. Now wasal, it means to join two things together. And it's actually something which comes for a new point in Balagha. So in Balagha, if you have a new point that you want to express, what you do is you bring a waw. It's very similar to the English language. So in English, what we do is, let's say, for example, I can say, for example, I read the book and the magazine. So I've used actually one verb and I've kind of mentioned it for two things. Or I could actually say this: I read the book and I read the magazine. Okay, so you've repeated it twice, and by mentioning "and," you want to point out a slightly different issue over here. So Allah over here, He brings the waw. وَجَعَلْنَا النَّوْمَ سُبَاتًا وَجَعَلْنَا اللَّيْلَ لِبَاسًا. Over here, it's like the reader is being pushed over here towards something that Allah Ta'ala He's highlighting to us. Next, ja'alna is we. Now we, again, in English we don't tend to use this like a royal sort of a statement. It's used for high authorities when they speak. You know, when you go to school and the headmaster says to you, "We'll think about it," speaking at a high level. So here there isn't very close intimacy with Allah Ta'ala in this. It's actually deliberately done to show that this, you know, what's been mentioned over here, the series of sentences that Allah is mentioning over here, is actually something that is done from the highest authority, from the powerful Almighty Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala is doing this. So, you know, it creates awe inside the reader when the reader reads it. Okay, so ja'alna, we mentioned jim, ayn, lam, and Allah deliberately does not use the word khalaqa over here because khalaqa, it conveys a slightly different meaning than ja'ala. Ja'ala is after the stages of khalaqa, of creation. Allah uses ja'ala over here because it's like saying that once something has been created, then after that any other changes that are being made to this is done through the process of ja'ala. Allah is making. Alright, so Allah has made the universe, but inside the universe, inside the planet Earth, Allah is slightly tweaking things up. He's creating night, He's creating day, He's making day, making night. So ja'alna al-layla, we have made night. And night is actually a time of the 24 hours that we have. And it's very interesting how you have to remember these verses were verses at a time when people could not see from outside of space. They couldn't see the earth. They would not have any means in them days to be able to observe from outside of the atmosphere what was happening on earth, what color earth was, and how night and day were functioning. All they could observe was from a land level. So Allah says, ja'alna al-layla libasan. This time of the 24 hours, Allah is making night. Is actually kind of, we wouldn't say creating night, but He's actually making things happen. And because of that, night is coming. Okay, so libasan, libas. Now this word, you probably heard this in Arabic, and libas might be used for two possible meanings over here. One is a covering, meaning the concept of covering something else with something else. Mulabasa. You cover something with something else. You cover a bed with the sheets, or you cover, you know, you're going for a journey and you're a trip and you're leaving your car at home, so you cover your car with a cloth so that it doesn't become dusty. Or libasan actually means clothing. Now if you take the first meaning, then it's going to mean this: ja'alna al-layla libasan. We've made the night a kind of covering. It covers the entire land. Now this would be very interesting because this is something we can actually physically see when we look at satellite images or videos of the earth and night coming on earth. So the earth is spinning and the night, you know, envelops the earth, and it's as though a cloth is being pulled over the earth. Very, very interesting. Okay, so that's one meaning. If you take the meaning of clothing on the other hand, then the meaning would be this: ja'alna al-layla, like a clothing. So the night is acting as a clothing for human society, for human beings. It's like concealing their nakedness. At night time, you're very vulnerable, you're very exposed. A person is weak and they're tired, and sleep overwhelms a person. So at night time a person is very relaxed. So that's the time when clothing actually befits. Clothing is used for comfort, clothing is used. So the word clothing, we'll come back to clothing I think here. Okay, so anyway, so therefore we take the meaning of like over here in that case. So Allah is resembling night to clothing. This is known as tashbih, like we mentioned several times before. Tashbih, a resemblance. Now because we know in our minds of what clothing is like, what the traits and characteristics of clothing are, automatically in our mind we begin to visualize something. Yeah, so this creates vivid images in our minds of resemblance of night and of clothing that people wear. So it's very, very powerful how Allah, He creates. Allah could have said something else. Remember, Allah could have said جعلنا الليل وقت انقطاع or جعلنا الليل كذا ظلمة, because we made the night a darkness. But He didn't say that over here because there's this element of clothing. And okay, so anyway, the word clothing actually comes for several meanings. One of the meanings of clothing actually comes for protection. So you wear clothing because clothing actually protects the body. You wear your clothing, you're protected from the heat, or you're protected from the cold, or even if the clothing is very thick, you're protected from weapons even. Like Kevlar, the kind of bulletproof vests that they wear. It's a protection, means of protection. So night actually acts as a means of protection. Very interesting. Then mix. Clothes, labasa yalbasu, actually has the meaning of mixing, and so there is an element of the night mixing with everything, like thoroughly mixing. And this is interesting. In other verses of the Quran, Allah says min sharri ghasiqin idha waqab, the evil of the ghasiq, the night which envelops everything and it pours into everything, into all the nooks and crannies, all the gaps and holes. Thirdly, libasan actually has a very interesting point, which is ease. When you think about clothes, you think about ease and comfort, and feeling that nice feeling of the clothing that you have. So at night time people feel very comfortable, they feel at ease, they feel relaxed, as opposed to daytime. So in other words, Allah over here is saying ja'alna layla libasan, showing the people that the creation of the universe, the changing of the night and the day, this is actually something which Allah deliberately has done. It's not something that randomly happened and humans have got used to it. Allah has actually deliberately done this, and these are the benefits of it which come to our minds. Subhanallah. And the more I think about these verses, the more it makes me think, how did the Prophet ﷺ, people who accuse the Prophet ﷺ of coming out with these verses himself and authoring the Quran himself, how much thought has to have gone in, and how much understanding of how the earth works and how the earth spins would have gone into it to be able to come out with something like this. Very, very profound words. Anyway, so like the libas is a covering. However, what is a covering for? Like, what does it cover? Does it cover humans? Does it cover all creatures? Does it cover the land? Does it cover night? Does it cover the trees? Maybe even it's referring to some sort of a system that exists where the trees don't photosynthesize anymore, and so it covers everything up and it allows them to rest. There are so many possibilities for the way that Allah uses the word libasan. Anyway, so ja'alna al-layla libasan. Okay, so let's just jot something down now. So night appears after sleep, right? Because the previous verse said ja'alna an-nawma subatan. So night after sleep is appropriate. I mean, night coming after sleep is very appropriate, something which we would understand. And also covering after covering actually comes after subat. Yes, so covering actually appears after subat. In other words, after there's a break, covering seems to fit in with that. So where there's a break, covering up seems to befit that kind of a sentence. Okay, next. So now the wow over here, again, it's wasal, waja'alna, and this comes for a new point. Ja'alna, we mentioned all about ja'alna, we made, powerful Allah. Nahar is actually the opposite. It's a loose opposite of night, actually, because if you think about it, Well, actually, you can say it's actually an exact opposite of the night. Night, whenever you say to someone night, in their mind, day would appear. Now, is the day the absence of night? Is the night the absence of day? So Allah is saying He has made the night a libas and He has made the day a ma'ash. So it's as though the day deliberately has been designed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right, as something. So Allah is bringing opposites over here. Now, sometimes when you look at something, you look at a color, and then you can't really figure out that color until you see the opposite of that color, or something that contrasts with that color, a contrast. So this concept of contrast is actually something very powerful in language. When you bring one idea and then you bring something totally opposite of it. For example, if I say Zaid was running down the street and Khalid was sipping his drink calmly in the shade of the tree. So do you see that image that happens there? It creates as though in your mind Zaid is a very tired, exhausted person after running, and Khalid is relaxing and chilling and in the shade. So in your mind you could see a very clear contrast between the two. So this concept of tibaq, we call this tibaq, like opposites. You have this concept over here as well. Now, جعلنا الليل لباسا وجعلنا النهار معاشا. The word ma'ash actually refers to either life, like as in the life that we live, ma'ash, or it means the means of living. Yeah, so ma'ash as in aish, living. So in that case it would mean this. جعلنا النهار, Allah is saying, Almighty Allah, the creator of the universe, the creator of all the planets, all the solar systems, everything. Allah is saying, we have made the day ma'ashan, we have made the day a time to live. As in, it's ma'ash, it's where you live, it's where you walk, it's where you run, it's where you work, it's where you study, it's where you educate yourself, it's where you have a family. This is the daytime, is where these like movement occurs, the time when lots of movement occurs. Okay, and the other meaning would be means of living. In other words, the daytime is a time where this would go into metaphorical meaning of it, majazan. Yeah, so in other words, in the day Allah has designed the day so that you can work, and because you can work you can earn, and because you can earn you make a means of living. You earn for yourself and you can sustain yourself in this time. Okay, so next, nahar and ma'ash are very appropriate words, right? Nahar is day, where there's lots of movement, and ma'ash is living, where there's lots of movement as well. So the two words actually fit together. If Allah was to say ja'alna layla ma'ashan, it wouldn't really fit together. Yeah, and likewise the opposite of layl and libas. Libas and layl seem to be two words that are very appropriate with each other as well. And if you actually think about it, the words layl and libas, it's like layl is nighttime relaxation. You want to be easy with your clothing, and maybe you take your clothes off, put other clothes on. Nahar is a time of work and hard effort, and it kind of fits in. It's a bit more rough. That's why the word even al-layl, it flows. Al-layla libasan, lam, the la, and nahara, very very hard ending. Nahara ma'asha, nahara ma'asha. Now if it was the other way around, you'd see some sort of a disruptance in the word. So for example, like ja'alna al-layla ma'ashan wa ja'alna an-nahara libasan. Wouldn't really fit in. Even the sound doesn't really kind of fit in. You see some sort of uqda, they call it an uqda there, ta'qeed. In Balagha they actually call this a ta'qeed, which is words that actually don't even sound right. Anyway, so libasan, this word libas is actually not the opposite of ma'ash. So normally we would probably expect, Allah may have said ja'alna al-layla libasan wa ja'alna an-nahara uryanan. Yeah, we made the night a kind of covering and we made the day a nakedness. Right? But Allah doesn't use that because it doesn't really fit, does it? It's not kind of like befitting for the Quran to use this kind of wording. So Allah, He doesn't say nakedness, so that's kind of hidden there. So this kind of tibaq, we call tibaq dimni, yeah, this is kind of hidden. And ma'ash, the opposite of ma'ash, so living is to be dead, you can say, or means of living is to be not working. Allah doesn't even use that over here. Alright, so Allah could have said وَجَعَلْنَا اللَّيْلَ مَوْتًا وَجَعَلْنَا النَّهَارَ مَعَاشًا. Yeah, but he doesn't use that because again it doesn't fit in here, because night is not really a death. Okay, so anyway, let's try to look at something else over here then. So okay, let's now look at this. So 3 words over here are used. Ja'alna, number 1, layl, number 2, libas, number 3. Ja'alna, number 1, layl, number 2, ma'ash, number 3. This is known in Balagha as mutabaqa, when you have words that kind of flow. So like if you're saying something, I ate bread with butter and drank tea with milk. I ate bread with butter and drank tea with milk. So 4 words there, 4 words there. It's a very symmetrical kind of sentence. Yeah, a lot of symmetry there. And humans like to hear sounds that are very symmetrical, especially kind of if you listen to, you know, nasheeds or poetry, or people who listen to music and songs. There's a lots of kind of symmetry in the way people sing as well. And in poetry, Arabic poetry, this is filled. You'll find this, you know, time and time again. They try to be very careful with the symmetry as well, so that it actually sounds very nice as well. Anyway, so you have 3 words there, 3 words there. You have the concept of mutabaqa there. Now, so let's actually now look. Actually, let me just change this here. The colors are getting a bit confusing. So 1 second. Actually, let me just. Right, that's better now. So let's list now the points that we've kind of come across. Actually, before that, visualization. So the visual importance of creating vivid imagery inside of your speech is very important as well, because it keeps people captivated, right? So I mean, you know, whenever people speak, sometimes you might turn off when people speak, or you don't concentrate. But sometimes what happens is their speech is very colorful speech, like we say, very vivid, image filled speech. Okay, so first of all, number 1, we've got the concept of wasl here, okay, which is a point of balagha. Number 2 is we've got the Allah Almighty creating the awe in the heart, the Allah powerful. Yeah, again, like we mentioned before, we can see the kind of knowledge of Allah, the power of Allah, because if He is the one that's made the night like this, and no human has ever created any sort of machine or anything that has the ability to be able to dictate how the night works. So number 1 and number 2 is that. Number 3 is the time making night. Yeah, the night time, using this time as though Allah has made. So normally we understand, you know, people make physical, tangible objects, but abstract things, night is something that you can't really quantify. Allah has made that. Okay, number 4 is the appropriateness between layl and libas. Number 5 is the concept of covering or clothing a word that has multiple meanings. So this multiplicity in meanings, or different camera views, like we said, is a very powerful way of conveying messages. Covering what? Here the object is kind of hidden. What is the night covering? The tashbih, the similarity that's being drawn over here, the multiple meanings of the night, of the libas, it's kind of points that it's trying to convey. The night after sleep idea, continuing from the previous verse, we have the covering after a break, subat, which is also from the previous verse. It's a very consistent speech that Allah Ta'ala is mentioning here. We have the wasl over here again, the ja'alna over there again, appropriateness between nahar and ma'ash, like we mentioned, visualization and imagery that Allah uses over here. Number 14, number 15. Okay, what else was there that we mentioned? We also had, yeah, okay. So we had the appropriateness. Okay, we did that, didn't we? The mutabaqa. 15 is the mutabaqa, so the 3 words there, 3 words there. Okay, so the mutabaqa. 16 is life, or the word ma'ash, meaning life or means of living. So just as libas can have multiple meanings, Allah brought an appropriate word which also has appropriate meanings as well, which is again indication towards a kind of what we call tibaq as well, nakedness. All right, so the opposite libas, which is tibaq al-dimni that we mentioned. And number 18 is again the opposite of ma'ash. Instead of mentioning death on the other side, Allah mentions libas. Okay, excellent. Let's point out now the balagha points that we have understood from this, or some of them at least. Number one, we've got wasl from this, so wasl is being used over here. Number two is we've got tibaq over here, the usage of contrasting opposites. Number three is we've got the idea of mutabaqa, using 3 on this side and 3 on that side. Number four is we've got the idea or the device in Balagha of tashbih, which is drawing similarities between two things. So like the layl and the libas. In other words, Allah is resembling night as a living being that is covering things up. It's like a living being that is covering things up. Number two is number five is i'tilaf. Okay, i'tilaf meaning the appropriateness of words that are being used over here. Okay, so you have layl is appropriate with libas, nahar is appropriate with ma'ash. Number 6 is tasweer, so visualization, imagery that's being created in these verses, which is a very powerful thing as well. Number 7 is the majaz, like we said, so this idea of ma'ash. So in other words, the nahar is made a ma'ash, the time is made a means of living. So it's not the time itself, it's actually what happens inside that time. Okay, so this is the majaz, metaphorical. And finally, number 8, fawasil, the ending of the verses, like we've been talking about in the past verses as well. Libasa, ma'asha, nahara, subata, and what was it? Jibala, etc. All of this plays an important role. Now these are only a few things that I have mentioned over here, but you can imagine how many devices of Balagha actually can be pointed out in these verses. Now remember, the whole point of me pointing these out is not to show you guys or to confuse you guys, overwhelm you with all of this. All I want to show you is I want to expose you to how much styles and devices are actually being used in the Quran. Now we use many styles in English as well. I mean, someone can argue, well, we use a lot of these in English as well. Yes, we do. But the consistency of that in the Quran is something which is mind-blowing. Right? The way that the Quran uses these and the impact it has on the reader is something you won't find in other places as it is found in the Quran. Anyway, right, so now let's try to fit these verses in with the previous verses. So night is something which you can say equates to weakness, maybe, because the person is like kind of very vulnerable. Their bodies are naked as well. There's nakedness there. You can also possibly imagine there's being some sort of a need for protection. Yeah, night, there's need for protection. Who is the one that's going to protect you at night time? Allah is the one that protects us at night. He's created this system. Okay, so day, there's the earning, right? So in the daytime, people are considered to be earning, and it helps them to earn. There's bright light in the day. It makes working much easier. You don't need to spend too much energy. Movement takes place, etc. And now, if you kind of imagine this now, imagine you're living on a different planet, or imagine you're living on a space station where the concept of day and night is totally different from what we're used to on Earth. Imagine how hard life is on living on this space station. Now, this makes you appreciate the concept of night and day on Earth, and how we take it for granted that Allah has actually designed night and day, and we don't realize the numerous, you can probably say the limitless benefits of concept of night and the concept of day that Allah has created. Okay, we will only know later on, really. Now, the day of judgment, going back to Amma yatasaalun, the day of judgment is like the day after the night, meaning just like the nighttime comes and you die, then the day comes. Isn't it plausible? In other words, if Allah has created a system where He brings day after night, isn't it plausible that Allah can bring a whole different realm after this realm that we live in? Isn't that possible? Yeah, so Allah is in control of every single thing in the entire universe, and hence if Allah is in control of all this, Allah can create a system which is like this. Anyway, I thought I'd finish off with a bit of tarkeeb. So I've written here a little bit of a tarkeeb. You guys can follow this. For those of you guys who have been asking, Brother Wahid, I hope this is beneficial for you. Anyway,